Hey everybody, what's going on? Dominic here. We're here for episode 2 of the BiVerbal podcast. It's been a couple months. We did the first one back in October, and I wanted to wait until I was really excited to talk about something new before I forced out a second one. And it's now January 15th, 2019. Hope everyone's having a good 2019 so far. And I'm here to kind of talk about some news and games. So let's just get right into it. Last time we were doing a podcast, I was talking about Call of Duty Black Ops 4. I completely switched from Black Ops 4, sold the PlayStation 4, sold the SCUF controller, and got a Nintendo Switch, picked up Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Why did I do that? Well, I was really interested in breaking into the competitive sphere of a game I knew well. So I knew it either would be Counter-Strike, Call of Duty, or Super Smash Bros. Those are the only games I've played for several years that I think I have a natural ability to play at the above average level. And then if you compile that with a lot of training and hard work, played at a competitive level. Unfortunately, because I don't have a lot of friends and I don't have any family members to play with, or I'm not really plugged in with the communities, I think team-oriented games are out. I had a lot of fun doing game battles on the MLG website, but forming an original team of 5, participating in 2K tournaments with people's different schedules and particularly levels of interest and dedication, I found myself oftentimes being disqualified from tournaments because we would have people no show or they couldn't be bothered to get up at 8 a.m. or 7 a.m. to practice, all 5 of us. And it was really a shame because these were people that all had advertised themselves on the free agent list as wanting the same kind of goal and having the same end game in mind with playing COD competitively. But when it really comes down to rubber meeting the road and losing to really elite players, you find out just how quickly people are willing to throw in the towel, myself included. But that was kind of a shame. So I knew that I had to kind of pick something that was more selfish, more single player based, where I'm the only one who decides when this endeavor quits because it's a individual game. So I switched to Smash Brothers. But the biggest challenge for me with Call of Duty competitively was the inability to learn hardpoint. Respawn game modes I'm terrible at. Always been terrible at them if they weren't, team deathmatch or kill confirmed. When I was growing up, games like Unreal Tournament and Quake 3 Arena were really popular esports first-person shooters, and a lot of those were just team deathmatch. That's kind of how you kept score and respawns. The minute Halo 2 came out with Oddball, King of the Hill, I always thought in FPS games those were just the most bizarre kinds of modes, particularly in Call of Duty, where it's a very small map compared to games like Battlefield. And a game like Control or Domination seemed exactly like Battlefield to me, but just in a much, much smaller format. And unfortunately, competitive Call of Duty is a rotation between hardpoint, search and destroy, and control. So an inability to play 2 out of 3 game modes at the same level I could play search and destroy, I knew was going to be sort of the big weakness in my armor. And I decided to just play a game like Smash Brothers, where there's one objective: knock your opponent off the stage. No items. It's a flat stage, and I've played the very first Smash Brothers game on the N64 an insane amount of time to where I thought there was enough natural juice in the tank. Pretty naive thing to go into a game thinking, I would say, because Melee became this explosive, professional game with a huge cult following, and then Brawl wasn't so big, but Smash 4 became huge in the game. I can tell you from having played Smash Ultimate for almost half a month now, it's incredibly deep, I think. But again, I was absent for Melee, I was absent for Brawl, and I was absent for Smash 4. So a lot of these things like stand dodging, foot stooling, and even Peach pulling up turnips, which sometimes can be a lucky bomb, that kind of RNG, things like that probably have been in the game or were introduced somewhere along those last 3 installations, and I just wasn't around for. So to me, it's very jarring because the N64 didn't have a lot of that stuff. There was no wave dashing, for instance. So I'm really excited about learning how to play Smash. It's kind of like revisiting an old friend. I still maintain to this day that Mario Kart 64 and Super Smash Brothers on the original N64, to me, as games, have the most replay value. So I'm excited for that. So, my SCUF controller's on eBay right now. I traded in the PS4 at GameStop. Just even looking at it gave me a headache because it felt like such a harebrained idea to try to make a team from scratch and try and play at the competitive level. But failure and disappointment are part of life, and a lot of things that you try don't always go the way you want to. But I'm glad I gave it a shot. I'm glad I got a chance to see what that community was like. And there are a lot of very talented players out there in Call of Duty that have been doing it since Modern Warfare 2, since the mid 2000s. So props to them. It was really a lot of fun to play against some super talented players, and I certainly learned a lot about competitive gaming. So yeah, picked up a Switch over Christmas. I've been playing a lot of Smash Ultimate. Do I like the game? I do. I really do like the game. As I mentioned before, Super Smash Bros. Melee became huge, and that game came out, I think, November of 2001. So I was young, and that's kind of one of the problems I have with esports. Is like, am I too old or am I too young for this? Because the kind of esports, the games that I remember being played competitively when I was growing up were games like Counter-Strike, Source, Street Fighter 2, Quake 3, Unreal Tournament, and all those players are in their mid-30s or way older. So as a kid, Melee came out, I was 8. So I wasn't playing a lot of Melee. I had the N64 one. On the flip side, a game like Call of Duty is a lot of young kids. I think some of the oldest players I've ever seen are like in their mid-20s. I'm 25, so I always felt extremely old. And it's just at this really bizarre crossroads because a lot of the titles that I remember, Quake's a good example with Quake Champions, they've been sort of reimagined, and the community base is extremely small for Quake Champions. I think the game became free to play at a certain point because it wasn't doing so well. And it's like the franchises I grew up with seem to have dwindled a little bit, or I don't recognize the landscape of them. And that's just kind of a really artsy-fartsy way of saying I can't tell if I'm, too young to play sort of the older franchises, games like Tekken and Street Fighter. It seems like people who are really adept at those games have been playing them since they came out in the early 90s. Or am I too old to get into something like a Rocket League or a Fortnite or a Call of Duty, So it's kind of an interesting impasse, and I think that's why I gravitated to Smash Ultimate, because I was like, well, the reflexes are there, the reaction time's still there, I'm pretty good at air dodging. There's just one big problem, and this is something also relative to Smash Brothers, is that the character I played in the N64 one was Kirby. I loved Kirby. I thought Kirby's drill kick was great. He was really good at spiking, and I was really confident playing against Fox and Pikachu with Kirby. Kirby in Melee, which is the one that became huge, I think went from the top 3 to like the worst. I think it was like 32nd, at least on the tier list that I've looked at. They nerfed Kirby, and I don't think he's any better in Ultimate. So it's like learning a new game from scratch almost. And they have so many cool characters in this game. They've brought back every character that's ever been in a Smash game, including Toon Link, Young Link. Like every incarnation of the same character is still back, which is interesting because I love characters like Cloud and Mega Man. Unfortunately, again, the characters that I tend to like don't seem to make it on the tier list, so I often end up playing characters I have no familiarity with. I'm of course referring to the Fire Emblem characters. Marth was huge in Melee, I think. Ken, Mewtwo, King Azin, I think they played Marth or Fox. It's like you have an option of 3 or 4 people, and Peach. So it's interesting to see characters that I wouldn't think would be on the S tier list being up there, and then some of my favorites like Ken from Street Fighter being fairly low, or my favorite characters from Smash 4, Little Mac from the NES game Punch-Out, or Duck Hunt from Duck Hunt on the NES being considered bad characters, which is a shame. I always love these retro characters, and they don't ever seem to do also well. Even in Melee on the GameCube, I liked Game & Watch, but again, I think I would be panned universally if I tried to main Game & Watch. So I'm having a lot of fun with it. It's tough. Believe it or not, I was playing the Inkling, which is a character from Splatoon on the Nintendo Switch. Trying to learn a new character with a new game since the Inklings were not in Smash 4, and I was like, well, that might be my way to break into this competitively, is to learn a character that people aren't familiar with playing against. That might be my best bet, which is why I waited until Black Ops 4 came out to get into it, because I was like, it's kind of hard to jump into something where the learning curve is already so steep. Right, so I try to wait for a new game to come out, and that's when I sort of choose. It would be like, I'd love to still play Halo 5, but the game came out in 2015, right? So everyone playing that now and ranked is probably extremely good and has been playing it since release. So you're swimming against the tide there. So I try to wait for games to come out before I really test the waters with our ability to play them competitively. So Smash Brothers is really interesting because when you play online, it can just pick anyone randomly if you're doing one-on-one. So it's a very wide pool of talent. And I had heard about something called Elite Smash, which is considered the top 10 percentile of players in the game, sort of the best talent in the top 10%. If you play the game well enough, you can be invited to participate in Elite Smash, and you can also be kicked out of Elite Smash if you lose enough. And sure enough, I was streaming on Twitch, and somebody in the comments section offered to play me one-on-one, and they had volunteered that they were in that 10%, and they used King Dedede as a main, the main antagonist from Kirby. And he beat me head on like maybe 8 times in a row. It was really frustrating. I think I beat him 1 time when he changed to Pikachu and I changed to Princess Peach. Really gifted player, definitely knew his combos, and it was maybe the first time I was playing the game competitively, or excuse me, playing the game online. It was interesting. So I decided to learn a new character. That's why I mentioned the Inkling earlier, who is a very gimmicky character, uses a lot of the paint from Splatoon to cover opponents in it, and then it acts as a damage multiplier. And I'm convinced it was just random luck of the draw, but I ended up winning 10 matches in a row with the Inkling. And I'm telling you this because then I received a prompt on the game and I took a photo of it because I was afraid I'd be eliminated from the bracket, which happened very shortly after that. I received a prompt that I had been invited to participate in Elite Smash, which was a lot of fun. So now you're playing against the top 10% players. And the first 2 matches I played against were 3 stock matches. That means each player has 3 lives. And I lost 3 matches in a row. The first 2, I got the opposing player down to his last stock with a high percent and then always blew it. And then the third player, wow, he chose Starwolf. And I got 14% on him the whole entire match. He 3-stocked me and I got 14% on him. So there are a lot of really talented players out there in the Elite Smash group of people. It was like what happened when I started playing Search and Destroy and Call of Duty on game battles for the first time. I think I lost the first 20 we played, and then I got really good at Search and Destroy. I learned jump shotting and sliding, and I learned how to use the SMG SOG really well. But it was such a rude awakening, and I'm experiencing that now. I'm still very grateful that this game doesn't have wave dashing like Melee, where I think it would be impossible to pick up and learn. But those Elite Smash players are so talented. It was incredible. My girlfriend and I were in Somerset, New Jersey over Christmas break, and we actually went to the tournament for Smash Ultimate as observers. It was called Let's Make Moves, and the top 8 players for Ultimate were there, and it was really fun to watch a lot of them using Palutena, using Wario, a lot of people still trying to make Fox as dominant as he was in Melee. But it's really fun to watch them do the dash dancing and sort of the more advanced techniques. And I knew after we had watched that was before I had ever even played the game or got a Switch, that was something that looked like a lot of fun and something very interesting. So I did make it into Elite Smash within, a very short time of having the game, but then I was kicked out just as quickly as I got into it. And like I said, I think I'm convinced that I had just played maybe 10 players that were as inexperienced as I was, and it's like if you're playing Counter-Strike and you're playing ranked and you don't have a rank yet and you win like 5 matches in a row with incredible statistics. It might not put you in as a private or whatever. It might put you in as, Silver Master Elite or Gold 3 or Gold Nova 4 or something. That can just happen if during the period that you're being evaluated, you perform so well. So anyway, I've switched from Call of Duty to Smash Ultimate, and I'll keep you guys posted on how that progress goes. I'm really excited because that means if I want to get up at 5 a.m. before work or school and practice, I can do that. I can kind of just stick to my own schedule, and that seems to be something that works well for me as opposed to team-oriented stuff. I tell people all the time, like, it does stink when you don't have a lot of gamer friends or siblings if you're into sports, and how that dictates your interests in life. So, like, I played baseball, I played basketball, but I loved football. I just never had anyone to throw a football with, so I never played football. And that was disappointing to me because you have to make choices in life based on the resources you have, in this case, someone to throw the football back to you. So I would still love to be playing Call of Duty right now, but I just don't think that elite level of players on teams want to deal with someone who doesn't know how to play a hard point. And then on the flip side, people who are really nice, really sweet, really always available, either just don't have that natural ability and will always lose, but they're always willing to play with you. It's kind of like, being slightly above average, but then not good enough to where a really great team wants to pick you up and spend time training somebody. They could just find another player who knows those game modes. So it's so weird always being in the middle of things, and I think that's why I'm limited to sort of single player, multiplayer stuff. But anyways, yeah, we switched from COD to Smash Ultimate, and I'm excited to see how that works out. I still have to, make a Smash Boards account and look up where some of the tournaments will be and just get in there and start participating in LAN events. But I'm excited to learn the game. I have a lot of work to do because I'm playing strictly on natural ability. I don't know anything about shielding, anything about grabbing, anything about stand dodging. I still forget to tech regularly when I take a hit. Teching is like when your character's falling in ragdoll motion. Instead of smacking down onto the stage, you can actually do that cool motion that Jackie Chan used to do in those movies where he would like lean back and then sort of like flip himself back up onto his feet. So that gets you back in the game a lot quicker with an invulnerability frame. And like I said, since Kirby is not competitively viable, it's like learning a new character from the start. But having said all that, I definitely think there's a there, and I'm looking forward to seeing, if we can squeeze any juice out of that endeavor. A couple other things I want to talk about with you guys. I'm excited for Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil 2 was really the first game that I ever became a geek over. When I was a kid, there were Resident Evil books that you could buy at Borders before they went under. And I had the first one, which I did a book report on. It was about the first game, and then the Caliban Cove, which takes place in between, I think, the first and second games. I remember the movie with Michelle Rodriguez and Mila Jovovich, or Jovovich, I don't know how you pronounce it. It was not such a great movie, but it had enough of stuff from the game in it. I think they made a sequel with Mike Epps, where the antagonist from the third Resident Evil was in the game, the Nemesis. But I'm just telling you all this because growing up, Capcom, I was just such a huge fan of all of their games. I loved Street Fighter. Same thing. Loved the movie with Raul Julia and Jean-Claude Van Damme. I mean, their IPs, Capcom's IPs, were the first games I became a huge nerd over. Like, I had the books, I had the watches, I had the t-shirts. And I'll never forget, I got Resident Evil 2 on the Sony PlayStation as a gift from a neighbor who was either moving or going off to college, and it was one of the first double disc games I'd ever gotten. So you have Leon's campaign and you have Claire Redfield's campaign, and it was a lot of fun, and it used to terrify me. The port on the N64, I'm told, is really awesome. It fixed up the controls a little bit, and it was just so much fun to get the shotgun early with Leon or get the crossbow with Claire. And I remember streaming it on Twitch once when I first started streaming during the month of October to try to do some sort of Halloween themed October stream. And a now partnered streamer named Bobochet was kind enough to sort of walk me through the entire game, making the experience a lot easier. Because as much as I'd like to say that, I love the first three Resident Evil games, they were very hard for me to learn growing up because I always had to use a game FAQ file. Like, I'd always have to just read, stop playing, read. Whereas Resident Evil 4, 5, and 6 were much easier for me to pick up intuitively because they seemed more like action games and they weren't nearly as challenging. But having said that, I'm super excited for the remake of the second game. I think it's been long overdue. I know it's highly anticipated. And they did release a one-shot demo, which means you could play the demo one time. I don't even think once you start playing the demo, you have the option to quit it. It's just on a 30-minute timer. And I wasn't able to finish it. I didn't even get anywhere close. But the game looks great, and I think the community will be really happy with it. Resident Evil 2 is an absolute classic, and just thinking back, I wanted to talk about this when I get to the GameStop portion of this episode, but KB Toys, which is also gone, they had a series of action figures that helped promote sort of Marvel and Capcom. So it was like X-Men versus Street Fighter, Marvel versus Capcom, and they had these double action figure packs back in the day where it would come with Magneto and Akuma. And I remember Toy Biz, the company that made them, also made Resident Evil 2 once, and they had the characters from Resident Evil 2. I'm trying to remember the little girl's name and the giant monster coming after her, and the monster was not originally a monster. It was a character that got infected, but you could get Leon S. Kennedy and the Licker, which is one of the first sort of mini bosses you encounter in the game. And they were just, the memorabilia for the game was so cool, and that was definitely one of the games that I got into. Just so many things that had nothing to do with the game, the lore, the story, and all that other stuff. I'm still a big Resident Evil fan at heart, but anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing what that game is going to be like. But the third and final thing I want to talk about is GameStop, because this sort of triages into what I was mentioning earlier. I heard that GameStop is going to be bought out. I don't know if that means that their management's changing and it'll still be GameStop, or that there will be no more GameStop fairly soon. And I know a lot of people have been commenting that they're kind of excited to see GameStop's downfall. I've seen a lot of comments about, you buy GameStop as a company, you acquire it for a lot of money, and then you trade it in for a couple bucks. Obviously joking about what it's like to trade in games and the value you receive in return for it. I understand a lot of those sentiments, but I really have a lot of fond memories of GameStop growing up. And again, I love watching YouTube videos of former employees talk about what it was like there, what the culture was like. And I certainly can attest to a lot of the things that they're talking about in those videos. But for me, GameStop was a big competitor of Electronics Boutique, or EB Games, before I guess EB Games merged with them, or they went under as well. And I think EB Games still exists in Canada or Australia, but not in the US anymore. But the difference between GameStop and EB Games was GameStop had that kind of memorabilia I was talking about with Resident Evil. They had keychains, they had t-shirts, they had action figures, and I remember they held on to retro games a lot longer than EB Games did. So I remember buying Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighter on the Super Nintendo, in the mid 2000s at a GameStop, whereas EB Games had sort of stopped doing that several years prior. So I thought they were always kind of different, kind of cool. They reminded me of that clothing line Jinx. I think the tagline for them was clothing for geeks, gamers, and nerds, or whatever. And it was a lot of fun to go into there and not always have to buy a game, but to buy a hat or something else. I'll never forget. In the 5th grade, one of my friends, Matt, he had a t-shirt with Mega Man on it, and it said, "Say hello to my little friend," obviously making reference to the Brian De Palma film, Scarface. I think it's the De Palma film, I'm pretty sure. I know Oliver Stone helped write some of the script, but I don't want to confuse Al Pacino's character in Scarface with his character in Carlito's Way. But I know that line is definitely from Scarface. But anyway, it's going to be bittersweet to see what happens with GameStop, and I don't know. It's going to be interesting not having sort of a brick and mortar store to go to anymore. And the last thing I want to talk about, I know I said GameStop was probably the last thing, but crossplay. It's really interesting to see, even though I'm not a big Rocket League or a big Fortnite person, people being able to play on the Nintendo Switch, the PC, the Xbox One, the PS4. That's awesome. Because one of the hardest things for me to do is I had a job interview with id Software. It would have been my dream job to be a playtester for id. I didn't get the job, unfortunately, but they spent a lot of time asking me about the games and the consoles I play on, the platforms. And I was having a difficult time trying to explain to them that I don't have a favorite platform. It depends on the game. So Call of Duty had a licensing deal with PlayStation. That's where all the competitive stuff happens. If you want to compete in LAN tournaments, you want to go pro, you want to participate in certain tournaments to acquire pro points in the hopes of qualifying for tournaments to go pro, you must play it on the PlayStation 4. It is available on PC. It is available on the Xbox One, but they have the exclusive deal with PlayStation. So you have to, buy a PlayStation SCUF controller. Like you're a PlayStation guy, and this is coming from someone who was always an Xbox fan. Xbox to me has always been synonymous with multiplayer. It was Madden, it was Halo. The PS2 back in the day, you needed an adapter to play online, and the only game I remember playing online on PS2 was like Black Hawk Down, or SOCOM US Navy SEALs. So Xbox to me, I remember getting into this current generation of consoles, and I just assumed Xbox was the place to be for multiplayer, and I bought an Xbox One not knowing that PlayStation had actually sort of taken the mantle with the good party system and the deal they have with Call of Duty now as the place to be for online Call of Duty. So my point to the human resources department when I was talking during the phone interview for id was a game like Smash Brothers, again, you have to buy a Switch. If it's on all the platforms, I would go to PC just because it seems like the possibilities are endless for a computer's power, but it's really, really cool to see people being able to play Fortnite and Rocket League on whatever console they choose with their friends. It doesn't have to be an extremely competitive thing, although both those games can get highly competitive, but it's just a lot of fun and makes crossing those boundaries has become so much easier and a lot more fun. Whereas everyone had to have a PlayStation or everyone had to have an Xbox back in the day if you wanted to have a LAN party or some big group get together, but just last night for kicks, my girlfriend and I are both not very familiar with it, but she played Fortnite on the Switch, I played Fortnite on this MSI laptop, and we were able to play duos together, and it was just so much fun, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, you have to, again, think about it in terms of if you had a Sega Genesis, you were playing Sonic, and if you had a Super Nintendo, you played Mario, and there was no sort of adapter for those things to change platforms. So it was really something that was mind-blowing to see. And again, I do think games like Halo will stay a Microsoft property, obviously, and Sony stuff will stay under Sony's umbrella. But for some of these popular games that aren't console exclusive, that can transcend that boundary, that's really exciting and that's a lot of fun. So I wish I was a big Fortnite fan. I wish I was a big Rocket League fan, but I know there's a lot of happy gamers for both those games out there, because like I said, if anything like that existed back in the day, I would have been absolutely thrilled. But that's about it. I just wanted to come back and make a second episode of the podcast. I had a lot of fun with the first one. I thought we'd give the second one a try, give you guys a little bit of update of where my interest sort of lies. And if there's any big news in gaming that I missed, let me know in the comment section. I'm happy to talk about it or hear your thoughts on it for the next episode. But today's January 15th, 2019. And I just wanted to bust out a second episode for you guys. Take care and enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks.